in 1967, Roland Barthes wrote La mort de l'auteur, the death of the author, an essay proclaiming that the opinions of an author on what his text may mean are irrelevant to the interpretation of said text. In 2020, Julian and Magnus decided that the author's abilities are just as irrelevant. This is Kill the Author. Hello and welcome to
Boobs. Welcome to Boobs.
To a new episode of Kill the Author. Also boobs.
This is Boobs.
This is boobs. I see you've done something with your foot there.
Yeah, I have.
Is it related to school days?
Not as far as I knew. It is possible that by watching School Days for half a year, my foot grew a tumor.
Oh,
it could
okay.
be that this was the result of School Days.
And that you had to have it operated out?
Yes.
It's a bit uncomfortable to record right now because, he's had an operation on his foot. So,
and I can't walk around places. I hate it.
Yeah, so if the audio is a little worse, that might be why that is. It might also just, maybe you just faked it, because with your foot all bandaged up, you can't go swimming. And you just wanted to remove all possibilities that you could go swimming under any opportunity.
I never want to see any kind of public pool again.
This is the, it's not the, what's it called? Beach episode. There is no beach episode in School Days, but this is the closest to the beach episode.
It fulfills the main purpose of many beach episodes, which is to show the female main characters in underwear.
Yeah.
in bikinis.
The thing is, I've watched a lot of anime, and I've watched a lot of pretty shameless anime too. Not that much, because I can get turned off by that.
And not this shameless.
It's not this shameless. Yeah, it's usually not this shameless. I was also thinking, because up to this point we'd only seen like the non-nudity version of the anime, and the one we're watching now is the one that features some nudity.
Did you compare them?
No, I didn't compare them. Because there was no nudity in this episode.
But maybe there's a difference? I didn't think of that so far.
I haven't checked. Maybe we'll figure that out for the next one. We hinted last time that this episode has kind of nothing happening in it. And that's why we might do both halves of the episode in one episode of our podcast. That's not how it's gone.
Yes. So I ended up making a lot more notes than I thought I would. And you ended up making a lot more notes than you thought you would.
Yeah. For the first half of this episode, which is basically just to give you a really short summary and to give you a summary of everything I remembered from the first half of the episode. Tits.
Yeah.
Tits. Just tits.
That's
just
the major point of this episode.
Just shameless fan service shots. But there was a lot more to it than that. Okay, there wasn't a lot more to it than that, but there was a lot to read into what was happening. And I think it made some of the themes we've talked about in the past of this show kind of more apparent in this episode because it's kind of blatant about it. So I have about double the notes I usually have for one of these episodes. And I also did some additional research because I find it kind of... I thought about some things in regards to this show. But let me just share with you my notes for the beginning of this episode.
Okay.
Titty. Ass. Crotch. Taisuke. Long ago, the Four Nations lived...
Come on! Yeah. So, for some reason I thought that... So, yeah, the very first thing that you see in this episode is someone's tits.
Yeah.
I thought this would be one of the main characters.
It's not.
It's not.
Most likely not.
It's unidentified person in blue bra. With the notes, oh god, oh no.
Because the main characters are just getting dressed right now.
Now, the second shot is an ass.
Yeah, that's why I made
But I'm pretty sure it's Daisuke's ass.
You think?
I think so, because he's wearing that red slip.
Yeah. It might be his ass, but it looked kind of like bubbly. I don't know. Maybe Daisuke has a really nice ass.
Maybe he just has a good ass.
Maybe there's something good about him, and maybe it's the ass.
Though it does appear to be a little bit too tight, Because you can see the crack peeking out
Just
above the slip.
Yeah, just a neat little side note on Taisuke. This episode really taught me to hate Taisuke.
Yeah.
I was kind of like neutral on Taisuke before. This episode really brought me to hating him. We'll get to why.
Yeah. So the third is an crotch shot of some identified person wearing a lavender one piece. I wrote that down. And then we have some Daisuke being gross.
Yeah. Daisuke brings the whole male gaze thing of this show to the absolute forefront in this way. We see basically everything from his perspective, and it's fucking gross.
We get a shot of Daisuke's very prominent bulge in his panties.
The first of two in this episode.
The second is worse.
Yeah, the second is a lot worse. Also, something I noted down is we get like a short collage of barely dressed women he ogles at, and none of them even have faces. Like, this is peak objectification.
Yeah.
We only see tits, we only see ass. He also comments on really wanting to see Kotonoha's tits.
Yeah.
While Makoto is right fucking there, standing next to him.
Well...
Yeah, I know, yeah.
This is... I was really shocked because that, for some reason, somehow... Daisuke does not know that Makoto's in a relationship with Kotonoha.
This episode introduces and resolves the conflict of Daisuke not knowing that the two of them are in a relationship.
It seems like this would be an opportunity for Makoto to say something, because for the first couple of scenes, there's a lot of Daisuke commenting on how hot he thinks Kotonoha is, and Makoto just says nothing about it.
That also kind of like explains, though, why Daisuke constantly had this thing going where he was commenting on how Sekai and Makoto are like a couple or are a couple and stuff like that.
Classic.
He just didn't know that there was anything with Kotonoha, or it's like it's this temporary brain memory loss thing everybody in this show seems to have about the two of them not being in a relationship. Maybe they forget too that he's with Kotonoha. Maybe Kotonoha is just very unmemorable when she's in a relationship with someone. I don't fucking know.
We also get a short flashback. Makoto remembers the kiss he had with Sekai in the previous episode, I believe. I don't remember.
Yeah, it was in the previous episode. That was the one with the whole kissing training and shit like that.
And he seems really bothered about it.
He seems torn. Like, the thing that I get from Makoto in this half of the episode for the most part is that he's kind of trying to make up his mind about their Sekai and Kotonoha. What does he want to do? Since both of them, like, with one of them he's in a relationship and the other one is being really, really weird about everything to him. But we'll get more of that later in the episode.
Next, we cut to a scene in the girls' dressing room.
Yes.
Of course. So there we have Setsuna, Hikari, Sekai, and Kotonoha.
My note here is mindless fan service.
Yeah, this one's weird. Of course, there's an ridiculous extreme focus on Kotonoha's breasts because School Days has not yet made clear enough that Kotonoha has large breasts.
Yes, that is an important character trait. We cannot forget that ever.
That reminds me, we talked about that a while ago. School Day, not every scene in School Days where there's only female characters fails the Bechdel tests. In some scenes, they also talk about the size of their breasts.
Yeah, sometimes they have boob envy, so that's something else. Gotta appreciate what you get, you know?
Yeah, boob envy is what the scene is.
Yeah, we have Hikari being jealous of Kotonoha's large tits, but in a friendly way. Then we have a shot of Sekai, who touches her own breasts
of
and
course.
thinks like,
Setsuna shows up.
Setsuna is there. Okay, here I have some fun.
Yeah, that was weird.
So Setsuna blows up Sekai's tits. Okay,
without context.
These notes are a bit confusing.
School Day took a weird turn.
She puts like these
inflatable,
inflatable like things like that exist. They're basically like you put them under your bra. I don't know what they're supposed to do in a bikini because you very, very clearly see that they're there. Maybe if you wear like a swimsuit, but I don't see the point of that. Something I have noted down here is she says she got them from Nanami.
Yeah, they're Nanamis, breast inflate things.
And okay, this brought me on a small search because I looked up like, does Nanami have unusually small breasts?
No.
Is that what? No, she doesn't. I looked that up. And then I had some thoughts. Nanami is sort of framed as slightly masculine throughout the show. So why, like, she's the sporty person, right?
She's boy.
She's boy. She's kind of the dude of the girl group, because I'll get to that a bit later in this episode, because women and men can't be friends. So she's the sort of men part of the girl group. So why does she have breast blow up pillows?
Why does she blow up her breasts?
Because, like, yeah, but also she doesn't have small ones. So did she have small ones at some point and doesn't need them anymore?
Or is it possible that she's been wearing them in every scene we've seen her and we just didn't know?
That is a possibility. I also wrote down that maybe Nanami is trans. We don't know a lot about Nanami, so maybe. Might be. If not, then that's my headcanon from now on.
Okay.
Setsuna, however, says to Sekai that she doesn't need the blow-up things. She likes her the way she is.
Is there something we don't know about yet?
I think that's just nice.
That's just nice. She's just being nice.
I think she's just a nice person.
So then the intro happens. The intro is the same as ever. And then we time jump back into the classroom. Which,
I just want to say, yeah, there might be something there. Setsuna might have a thing for Sekai. There will be more about that in the future.
I'm not sure. Was there ever a scene, was there ever a time jump in School Days?
A jump back? Not that I can remember.
Because then this is an outlier.
Yeah.
Because we jump back in time to the classroom.
Basically, we see all of them in the girls' dressing room, and then we have... You're probably wondering how I got into this situation.
Then we jump back to the classroom.
Yeah.
And I have to disappoint everyone. And with everyone, I mean myself.
And me too. I was also disappointed.
I mean both of us.
Yeah.
There's no teacher scene.
Yeah. It's a classroom scene, but the teacher doesn't talk. So we don't get a very... Don't be worried. I looked into another story for this episode. It's not related to the classroom scene, but we will have something to go way too in-depth about. Don't worry. But yeah, no teacher.
So before we get to the classroom, we get a small establishing shot of the school. And the sky is clouded and dark. So everything is really like shadowy and it looks depressing. And I don't think we've had this before. And I guess you could say it's foreshadowing.
Ooh.
Things go south in this episode.
Something interesting though is, like we talked about before, that the show doesn't seem to be aware sometimes of what it's doing, and how dark a lot of what's happening is, and how shitty a lot of what's happening is. And they did draw a special establishing shot for this, though, that they didn't have to do. Like, they reuse establishing shots all the fucking time. So... was that actually the point? Was the point actually to do some dark foreshadowing here? I think it's reasonable to believe that.
It's hard to tell what the School Days people are trying to do.
Yeah. And like, fuck the author. The author doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that might have actually been the point. That they might have actually been trying to foreshadow things going dark. Of course, that's kind of undone by the rest of the episode being extremely bubbly for the most part, and extremely bright and colorful. But, yeah.
I mean, it gets darker over time.
It gets darker, especially towards the end.
I think you can really say that this is foreshadowing, puns aside.
Pun intended and also irrelevant.
Pun intended and unintended.
Yeah. We see Makoto sitting in class as we cut to that classroom, and he doesn't seem to be that into the idea of going swimming. We see him looking at these tickets that at the end of the last episode Kotonoha gave him, and he seems like kind of apathetic, kind of not that into it, into the idea.
He has a flashback of Kotonoha giving him the tickets, and he seems pretty unhappy about it.
Yeah.
So this is also a hint of what I feel is the central conflict of this episode.
Yeah.
In general, it seems like the relationship between Makoto and Kotonoha is on a different level now. Because to me it feels like Kotonoha is now in a spot where she's somewhat comfortable.
Yeah.
Like... I think this is because Makoto isn't trying to go beyond her boundaries anymore, which he's really unhappy about. But it just seems like Kotonoha seems to be a lot more content now.
Yeah.
And then there's Sakai.
Yeah.
Who's whose role is also becoming a little bit more clear in this episode, in this whole relationship.
Yeah, and there's also Makoto, who is, at this point, kind of over the relationship. Like, we see him in this episode a few times kind of struggling with making the decision what he wants to do. Sekai or Kotonoha, which one does he want to do? And it seems like, even though he has some like thoughts on wanting to be with Kotonoha throughout the episode, it generally seems like he's just not into that idea anymore. Like, just the idea of spending time with her seems to annoy him.
So then Hikari shows up, and she also has tickets to the water park.
Yeah. Sekai also mentions that when she sees Makoto's tickets.
So I think that the water park is like a new thing, because Sekai says, so have you heard about the water park?
Ah, okay.
So maybe it's like a new thing, it just opened.
That might be.
And it seems Hikari is like inviting a bunch of friends to hang out there. But she has other intentions as well.
Yeah.
So first of all, she pulls out a water park card and says like, well, and then Makoto screams out loud, "You're interested in me too?"
Which, yeah, that's uncomfortable. That's just kind of uncomfortable.
And it feels like it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Because up to this point, it doesn't seem like anyone else is interested, or if they are, then Makoto is way too deaf to understand, to realize that people are interested in him.
It's maybe because she looks kind of like shy and kind of like she wants to ask him something when she pulls him out. That might be part of it. But yeah, it's not that. It's not that. She isn't actually into Makoto at this point. She wants to ask him if he can also get Taisuke to come to the water park with her.
Yes.
So this is a common theme that will be repeated multiple times throughout the episode. Nobody can fucking believe that anybody would ever love Taisuke. Including the audience, including me. Taisuke is the fucking worst. Why would anybody want to be with Taisuke? Makoto says that multiple times throughout this episode. Multiple times he says, I don't understand why someone would want to be with Taisuke, who is like his best friend from what we know.
Also, Makoto gets beat up in this scene by Sekai.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Also, like at a later point in the episode, I think she also kicks him, which is really balm to my soul. I enjoy that.
It's real nice. So, yeah, Makoto gets slapped off screen, which is one way to save some money. Not to animate Sekai beating him up. I would have liked to see that happen. Unfortunately, I didn't.
Yeah. I also, like, in this scene, it's not really mentioned that Hikari is intending to bring her friends along. Like, the point I got was sort of like, she wanted to go to the water park and wanted to have Makoto ask Taisuke if he wanted to come with her, like a date sort of thing. But, yeah, it's pretty clear that she wants to bring her friends along too. Because they're all also there, and otherwise they wouldn't have a point of being there because they aren't involved yet.
I have another comment about Hikari being into Taisuke. First of all, in this school, the three guys met. Is that maybe one of the relationships that is that the title of the anime talks about?
Who are the three guys then?
Well, I mean the three guys. It wasn't it an indication that there's three relationships in this? Is this maybe one of them?
I mean, it may be because of things that happen later. Taisuke and Hikari get interwoven with the main love triangle in some ways. So that might be a part of it. But if they're talking about the three guys that met, I think that's really just Makoto, Sekai, and Kotonoha.
Yeah. And
neither of them is, at least originally, involved with Taisuke and Hikari's relationship. The relationship in, like, the biggest quotation marks.
Yeah, I mean, it seems unlikely, partially because I completely forgot about this plot point.
Yeah.
I forgot it existed.
Yeah, me too.
Because
I can't remember how that was resolved. I don't think it was resolved.
It disappears. It disappears quickly.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll notice it this time when we watch through it, but I absolutely forgot about that before.
Also, Makoto is happy about the fact that there's other people coming. I think because he didn't want to spend time with Kotonoha alone.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to be it. And he, like, through the way the situation unfolds, Sekai will be there too now, which is who he wants to spend time with anyways.
So now we get back to Aqua Square. That's the name of the pool. It's called Aqua Square.
Okay. It's a square pool. Aqua Square. I get it.
Maybe this has nothing to do with the pool. That's just the square where the pool is.
That might also be
It's just Aqua Square.
I also wrote some notes down here about the scene that follows this. We have Makoto and Taisuke sitting there in the water park.
Taisuke talks broadly about how he wants to bang Kotonoha again.
Yeah. The notes I wrote down here is Taisuke's talking about Kotonoha's tits. Makoto is actually super cruel about Taisuke. He's, like, very blatant in his inner monologue about how Taisuke is unlovable.
He also says when Taisuke says he wants to be with Kotonoha, he says, like, within limits, hopefully. And I said, Makoto, you fucking hypocrite.
Makoto, maybe tell him. Maybe tell him about this whole relationship thing at this point.
Yeah, he questions Hickory's taste. Hickory beefsteak's taste.
Yeah.
It tastes good.
Hickory barbecue sauce, yeah.
Hickory barbecue sauce. I'm sure it tastes good. He questions Hikari's taste, which is understandable.
Yeah, it is understandable. But, like, this guy's his basically best friend.
I think, at least. I don't know.
As far as we know. He's, like, incredibly cruel about it.
What if when they first met in the first episode, what if that was actually the time they first met?
I mean, it seemed like the three guys met. It seems actually like they knew each other, at least at that point. But I mean, people seem to become friends very quickly here. Sekai's ass walks into the frame.
Yeah, the four girls show up. Setsuna, Hikari, Sekai, and Kotonoha. And we get boob shots of all of them.
We get a nice little fun joke about Setsuna having small tits.
Yeah, the show is really cool about Setsuna having small breasts.
Yeah. As an advantage of that, Setsuna is sexualized a bit less than the other characters on the show. But only slightly.
Yeah. So, because it's totally important, Kotonoha's wearing a turquoise bikini with white stripes on it. Sekai's wearing a pink bikini with white stripes but in a different pattern. Hikari's wearing a orange bikini with frills. Like the panties are made in a way so that they look like a skirt, and there's a big bow in the middle of her bra. And Setsuna's wearing a dark blue, quote-unquote, one piece. I thought it was a one piece. It's not.
It's not?
No, the upper part of it is more like an undershirt.
Ah, okay.
So it's separated. But she's wearing more clothes than the others do, which I appreciate.
So are you trying to tell me that they're not wearing school swimsuits?
Yeah, they're not wearing school swimsuits.
Taisuke comments on this.
Yeah.
He comments on, the schoolgirl swimsuits are sexy in their own way, but the swimsuits they're wearing right now are also sexy. I wrote down, an adult wrote this. This dialogue was written by adult people.
Another thing, Setsuna is wearing a red bow on her head, and she's always wearing a red bow on her head. I didn't really pay attention to this so far.
Is this a swimming bow?
Is this a swimming bow?
The bow she just wears for swimming.
It's gonna get wet. She always wears that.
Neoprene swimming bow made from waterproof materials. I don't know.
A waterproof swimming bow.
Or she just... I don't think she ever dives under the water. Like, the few times we see her in water, she's, like, to her neck or, like, half her face. I just think she keeps the bow above water so it doesn't get wet.
Or she's in the water up to her nose and says swim repeatedly.
Yeah, she also does that. But either way, bow stays above water.
So I just wrote down that Makoto and Daisuke ramble about swimsuits. I didn't care.
And after they do that, Setsuna asks Hikari, so you're into that? And Hikari's like, like, not even Hikari can explain this fucking plot point. Nobody can explain why she's into Taisuke.
So Kotonoha can swim.
Yes.
That's another thing that we hear. I thought it was weird, but it's probably not as weird as I think it is. Just because I can swim.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a long while to learn swimming.
Same.
But these guys are teenagers.
I learned swimming when I was 9.
I learned swimming when I was 9 or 10 too, I think. I learned it in 3rd or 4th grade of elementary school. Which was pretty late.
Something like that. So she can swim and Makoto wants to teach her.
And
Daisuke
is being fucking weird about it again.
Daisuke goes completely crazy and is like, oh my god, I'm so jealous of you!
I wrote Daisuke flips.
Taisuke then gets kicked for comedic effect by Sekai, because she kicks people in this episode and punches them.
I wrote down Sekai hits Taisuke when he's envious of Makoto. Good. Yeah. Taisuke receiving violence is always a plus.
So next, Hikari says
Hikari.
that she can... Hey, did it again.
Hikari smoked him.
So then Hikari says that she can swim either.
Mm-hmm.
I assume she pretends she can swim, and she asks Daisuke to help her to teach so.
Yeah.
Help her to learn to swim. I can't speak.
Yeah, and when he says sure, Sekai is enraged and says, you could be more enthusiastic about this.
Yeah, but I understand this, because he went completely insane about how jealous he is of Makoto.
Yeah.
And then when she says, okay, how about you teach me to swim? He's like, okay.
Yeah, but
whatever.
Also, this really exemplifies like a core issue of how men are treated in this show, because they're simultaneously like there's a lot you can say about how gender is portrayed in this show, and I'll say a bit more about that a bit later in the episode. But this gives a really strong hint about this, because all the negative aspects of masculinity that Sekai constantly talks about, like she constantly talks about how guys are just stupid and dense, like from their own, and they can't understand women and stuff like that. Like, that's not just criticisms. She wants that, too. She wants that in that situation. She wants him to be as weird and gross and lecherous about the woman who's into him as he is about that other woman. Like, she encourages that sort of shit. This weird sexual predator kind of fucking shit that's coming from Taisuke. The gender roles in the negative aspects are enforced by the characters as well, even if they constantly, like, argue about them. My next note is, why are they pressing Taisuke's cock in my face?
Yeah.
We get another crotch shot of Taisuke.
It's horrible.
And it's like it's rubbed into the camera. We see the moving of the bulge.
No, please.
Beneath his
Don't do this to me.
Speedo. It's pretty terrible. I don't like to see that.
There's another little something I want to mention.
Oh, okay.
While I'm doing this, I Google School Days characters a lot, because I keep forgetting who's who.
Yeah,
and
I did that too.
Things have changed.
Uh-huh.
I noticed. First of all, Makoto is now the first in the order.
Uh-huh.
Before he was like the last, he was like the last person in that list.
Wait,
now he's first. And the image for Kotonoha has changed.
I've seen that. I've seen that the image for Kotonoha has changed. Wait,
She's
I gotta search for that.
Psycho Killer Kotonoha.
Yeah. I noticed that. Wait, I'm just gonna Google real quick. School Days characters. If it's yeah, it's here. It's the same here too.
Yeah.
Makoto's in first place.
What happened?
It also says it's a love movie, a romance movie.
2007 love movie. One season. It even says one season. What is it now?
That's interesting. Oh man, we should have screenshotted it before so we could like directly compare it.
Was that?
Yeah, I think all the characters, like most of the characters, have new character portraits. They have these portraits with white backgrounds.
What
didn't
happened?
Have those before.
Was that us?
Maybe someone updated the wiki. That might just be it.
Did we miss something?
Maybe someone is just trying to shut down our podcast. Like, they're lying about School Days. Like, Google it. It's different from what they say. Maybe we just took too long to make the podcast, and everything has changed. Everybody knows now. The School Days Mafia is on our tails.
Then we move on to another scene in Aqua Square. Mm-hmm. This time with Makoto and Kotonoha.
Yeah, the swim training.
The swim training
been
scene.
Hinted at before.
So swimming, teaching someone to swim for Makoto means pulling them around through the water.
Yeah, I wrote down that his teaching method is pretty garbage.
He holds her arms and pushes her around, which at least gives us a lot of gives the show a lot of opportunities of sexy underwater shots of Kotonoha's body.
Before that, though, we see sexy underwater shots of Sekai's body as she swims by. That's before they learn that. And Kotonoha at this point mentions that she's like impressed by Sekai. Mm-hmm. And Makoto says, well, maybe she should teach you to swim then. Not in a like being petty kind of way, in a maybe someone else can do the teensy tiny amount of work that would be expended by teaching this girl how to swim. He like immediately tries to push that burden of helping her at all away from himself again.
So then she falls over.
Mm-hmm.
She falls
onto Makoto.
She falls into him.
Mm-hmm.
her breasts squish on his chest.
Yeah,
Of
smushed
course they
against
do,
him.
smushed
Yeah.
against him. And now he's like, stay there. Please stay there for longer.
Yeah,
He's
Hide
not-
tighter.
Now he's really enjoying it, huh?
He's
Like we already knew.
being so fucking weird about it. I mean, she agrees at this point. Like, at this point, she's like, yeah, to everything
Okay.
he says. And we have Sekai watching mournfully from the distance again,
She always
standing in the water and swimming off angrily as she sees this. Yeah, I mean, this is like the only point we have in the episode where he seems all interested in Kotonoha, and it's only because her tits are literally smushing against him, which again shows what kind of a guy Makoto is, you know?
Yeah. We know Makoto.
Like, any way of spending time with her that doesn't directly involve anything sexual is completely uninteresting to him. He's literally just interested in her as like a sexual object. It's completely fucked.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be with her anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it was always kind of like that, right? Like,
Yeah.
It was always just that he was checking off the list of sexual things and only doing anything with her to get to the next stage.
This is one reason why I kind of struggle to understand what mindset Kotonoha is in now. Because she seems to be happy. Like, she seems to think that they're in a real loving relationship now, which becomes more and more relevant throughout the remaining half of the show.
Yeah, basically she's already in partially broken mode and it's only getting worse. Yeah, we'll talk about that more when we get to it, but Kotonoha seems like we've got some hint at that in the last episode. I think the point where that started, Kotonoha sort of ignoring the negative parts of their relationship and trying to like only look at it as a loving relationship, even if it absolutely isn't working anymore. I think that started at the end of the last episode, where she just happened to meet Makoto in the street and gave him the tickets to the to go swimming, and wasn't trying anymore to get didn't even show a reaction to him not even having read her message that she worked all day on. I think that was the starting point of that, and it's only devolving further throughout the rest of the show.
So now we move on to a scene with Daisuke and Hikari on their little date they're having.
I wrote down Hikari and Daisuke seem to actually have a good time.
First of all, we have Hikari going down a water slide, and with the prevalence of Dutch angles we've had so far, I thought it was funny that the camera just turns completely upside down.
Yeah, we have a 180 degree turn
the ultimate
of the
Dutch
camera.
shot. The ultimate Dutch angle.
The most powerful Dutch angle. Yeah, we see her falling into the water out of a water slide, like upside down.
But then the camera turns back around, and Daisuke falls through the water slide and dies.
Sadly not. No, he lands in the water, and then he gets hit in the back, and then he dies.
Yeah. Setsuna shows up from behind him, from the slide, and runs into him. Which, if you freeze frame this at the right moment, is a wonderful scene of just Daisuke falling over with panic on his face. Behind him is Setsuna with completely empty, just in the air. This is wonderful.
Oh man, I should have done that. That sounds good.
I didn't screenshot it, I should have. I made another screenshot later.
Okay, we'll look at that when we'll get to that. We have a small conversation following that between Daisuke and Hikari.
Yeah, we have... First of all, Setsuna is class president. I don't know if this was established.
I think it was. I think they established that before.
Yeah.
And we have them sort of talking about relationships in a way. And this conversation was kind of confusing to me, but I wrote some of it down. I wrote down that Daisuke says at that point, girls are a mystery.
Which he says into Hikari's face.
Yeah.
Hikari's face.
Yeah, and she responds with, well, they're not that open with guys. Which kind of like brings us back to this theme of gender throughout the show, and how men and women don't understand each other and operate like completely separate from one another. We see that in the girls only hanging out with the girls, usually. And I'm assuming Makoto only hanging out with Daisuke before Sekai showed up. And like at the soonest point where we get any change to that, where we have Sekai and Makoto just sitting at the back of class and talking, everyone immediately assumes they have to be in a relationship. Because like a friendship between men and women is impossible in the context of this show. Because men don't understand women and women don't understand men. This just shows it again. Hikari like openly states, also like I wrote down here again, this show was written by an adult man.
Yeah.
Which just she just states, oh yeah, women are mysterious. Like it's blatant, like it's open. Like women are just trying to be mysterious, and that's why men aren't understanding them. Not that they're not trying to engage with them on their own level. But yeah, that's basically what we have here. And this is followed by Hikari asking him if they want to go down the water slide again. And him responding, I was so fucking confused by that. Him responding, oh, I didn't know you were like that too. And she says, well, yes, I am. So, is going down the water slide her being a mystery about what she wants from him? Because it seems like anything that doesn't directly further them being in a romantic relationship is to him completely impossible to understand. Like, why are you doing this confusing thing? Why are you doing this thing that doesn't directly lead to us dating? Why do you want to just have fun with me, like with a friend at this point? This show is such a weird fucking view of relationships. Like, this is completely separate from how it all ends and how it views the relationship specifically between the main love triangle. This is just a really weird perspective on relationships in general, and I don't get it.
So now we move on to another scene, this time with Makoto and Sakai.
Mm-hmm.
And this scene, I think, is pretty important. So Sakai and Makoto are talking on like a bridge.
Mm.
And Makoto Noha isn't there. She's gone to the girls' dressing room.
Mm-hmm. Or like to the bathroom, we already know.
So Sakai says, it seems to be going well. She saw like what happened. I think she is referencing Kotonoha bumping into Makoto and says, that seemed like a good thing.
She says things are going well, and she says, Makoto at this point tries to deny that anything happened there, which I thought was weird. Because it's like, okay, is he trying to not make her jealous or whatever? Because she clearly is, even if she's hiding it in this scene. And she mentions the training again at this point.
Yeah.
Too. She says that, hey, did you get it, like in a jokey kind of way? Hey, did you learn that from the training? Being aggressive like that? And I was thinking, like, wasn't the training about him not being like that anymore? Or, like, he has been aggressive all this time. That was the problem with the relationship. That he tried to move way faster than Kotonoha.
It's just so weird.
Yeah.
I feel more and more like... I mean, I already believed before that the training wasn't... that she didn't do the training with him in order to help him in his relationship.
Yeah.
But that was a pretense to herself to be with Makoto.
Yeah. It's just really confusing at this point.
Also, after that, Makoto says, I might need to practice more, as he attempts to basically finger her ass from behind.
He also says, does that mean that I'm good at what we were practicing? Basically saying, like, I caught that as, like, a sex thing. Like, oh, do you mean I'm good in bed or whatever?
And she flips out.
Yeah, she flips out.
Of course.
As she always does. She, at this point, she slaps him off when he tries to touch her and reminds him that it was just practice and whatever. And then we get like a creeping shot up Sekai's body showing...
Makoto's like, you look good in your swimsuit.
And it seems like kind of genuine.
Yeah.
For the most part. She kind of says, it's a new swimsuit. And he says it has sort of a Sekai feel.
Yeah, they have some banter. I didn't make much notes.
Yeah.
Many notes. Just they seem to be just talking, having fun.
Yeah,
I guess.
They seem a lot more, like, friendly with each other. Like, they enjoy spending time with each other than Makoto does with anyone else.
Makoto specifically says he enjoys being around her.
When she, like, directly following that, compares herself to Kotonoha, like in Tit Envy again. We get that again.
Classic.
He tries to, like, get her to shut up. Like, I don't want to talk about Kotonoha right now. Which is very telling again.
Yeah.
He doesn't even want to think about Kotonoha currently.
You get, like, this short, very uncomfortable moment. And then Kotonoha comes back.
Yeah. What I thought about this moment too was... It again shows this thing that I mentioned before. That, like, friendships between boys and girls aren't possible in this world. Immediately, as soon as something like that starts, people assume it's a relationship. The girl group has Nanami as like the alternative to having a boy in there, because she's like she fills that role in their conversations a lot. It's just so split in the middle, and I think a lot of the issues that arise in this show sort of stem from that. Because if Makoto and Sekai could just be friends like normal people, I think they'd have a good time, and we wouldn't be having all this trouble. Because that's what it seems when they talk, right? They just seem like they're having fun and bantering and making jokes about each other. There doesn't need to be anything more than friendship there, but this universe's framing makes a friendship impossible between men and women, because it instantly has to lead to sex. It instantly has to lead to a relationship. It's uncomfortable, the way this show looks at relationships and just friendships between genders, because it seems like there's no possibility for that. Everybody assumes Makoto and Sekai are a couple just because they're hanging out. What I think this show is inspired by, and I don't think it comes originally from that, this is what I mentioned before. I have looked into a book for this episode, a book I've known about before, and that I think might be kind of foundational for the way this show looks at men and women. It's not a Japanese book. Here we have an American book. It's called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. That's like a saying you've probably heard before. It was written in 1992 by Dr. John Gray. And it was the highest-selling non-fiction book of the 1990s.
Oh, that's cool.
At least according to, NBC or something like that. I'm not sure. And basically, it's a book that a lot of people have read. It was like a popular psychology book, basically talking about, hey, why don't men and women get along? You know, those tropes from like shows you've watched that were made in the 90s and in the early 2000s that have this thing of like, women are a complete mystery and can't be understood, that the show also kind of peddles.
I mean, yeah, this is what we're having here.
Yeah, this is exactly what this is resulting in. What the book basically asserted is that there are fundamental psychological differences between men and women. And it says that they sort of function, that's what the title is referring to, that they sort of function like different societies.
So the book argues for this stuff and not against it.
It argues for this stuff, yeah.
Oh man, this is the gender bell curve.
Kinda, yeah. It basically says that it's kind of impossible to truly communicate between men and women, because men and women function like different societies with different expectations and different like ideals and thoughts on shit. It's sort of like, it kind of uses a lot of linguistic research for that. And I dug something out. I mentioned before that I studied literary studies. I also studied linguistics. And I had like a whole class on basically differences between groups in the same language. And there's some really interesting things to be said about the differences between men and women in just general talking. Because there are linguistic differences between men and women that can be looked at. Like, for example, that there's this stereotype that people always mention, that when a woman talks about a problem, she doesn't want the guy to solve it. She just wants to talk about the problem. And that is what a lot of conversations fail on. That's one of these things. But there's also just that, for example, in a conversation between a man and a woman, usually the man will try to talk more than the woman, even if he doesn't have a lot to say, or will comment on like every single thing. That's what's also called mansplaining. It's just like a man needs to assert his knowledge on a certain issue in a conversation, even if he basically has nothing to say about it. You also see that in classrooms, for example, since men tend to answer questions asked by the teacher, even if they're not sure about the answer, while women usually will only raise their hand if they are sure about the answer. Men just want to comment on things like that. Women are a lot more cooperative in conversation too, or tend to be. Like, they don't want to dominate the conversation. They just want to, like, offer their part, have someone else offer their part, and it goes on like that, while men like to have the final say in a conversation and like to, like, win the conversation in a way. There's a lot of psychological research about that.
You mean destroy the other side with facts and logic?
Exactly like that. The thing with the book is... as you might know, as you might guess at this point, it received some criticism.
Yep, I can think.
First of all, the book just very straight up conflates gender and sex, which it was written in the 90s, so that's part of it, but like the research for that existed at that point. it's also like it's pop psychology. It's not peer reviewed. It's not the most like academic book in its way.
So it is the gender bell curve.
It kind of is. It's just less. It doesn't advocate for policy like the bell curve does, but it conflates gender and sex, and it conflates like all women and all men. Which there's been a lot of responses to it. A pretty popular one, a pretty well-known one, is The Myth of Mars and Venus by Deborah Cameron, which was like an actually academic response to it. And there are a few more, basically like trying to dismantle the claims. For example, the book is extremely focused on Western society, on like how gender roles function in America for the most part, which is very different in other societies where the stereotypes of men and women are also very different and can be assumed to be different. The one I mentioned before, The Myth of Mars and Venus, also asserts that those aren't like psychological differences you are born with. They tend to evolve because people like just automatically try to fit in. So if you're a young girl and only hanging out with young girls, you sort of assimilate the way they converse over time. And assume that. There's also the element of trans people, especially, make this conversation a lot more interesting, because for the most part, trans people start to like assimilate that way of speech. Like a trans woman will start to use more linguistic elements of female speech, traditionally seen as female speech, which kind of like negates the biological element of it, but also is really interesting because you wouldn't assume that if it's something you just do because you've learned that from growing up, that girls are supposed to talk like that and boys are supposed to talk like that, because you wouldn't have learned it that way. There's a lot of interesting studies on that, but it's a lot more simple than that at this point. And also it's just, that's a general thing. If a dude grows up knowing a lot of women and talking with a lot of women and mainly having female friends, his speech patterns will be more traditionally feminine than traditionally masculine. For exactly that reason. We try to fit in. We try to talk more in a way that's like, of course there are biological differences between men and women, and part of that does form our linguistics. But most of it is stuff we learn later in life.
Yeah. It's environmental.
Yeah, it's environmental, exactly. And this is sort of, we can see this in the show in a way, because the men in the show, before the plot really kicks in, only hang out with men. The women in the show, before the plot really kicks in, only hang out with women. The only characters we know in the show that are from opposite genders and that were together at the start of the show are Nanami and her boyfriend, who we haven't seen at this point, but he's been mentioned. Nanami is like the only character in the show who's in a relationship from the start. She has this sort of boyfriend off screen. And like, they're in a relationship. The only possible way of men and women fitting together in this show is a romantic relationship. And that's also where the conflict arises, because he can't, like, Sekai and Makoto are sort of pressured by everyone around them in the way that, hey, these two are hanging out, they have to be together, right? And I think a lot of the problems, like, it starts off as Sekai just wanting to help Makoto out with Kotonoha, as far as we know. And the framing of the show and the way the society of this show works forces them to be in a relationship because men and women can't be friends, because they function on different levels. And the only person Makoto really has fun with and can really talk to is Sekai. And still, Sekai constantly enforces this gender difference bullshit. She constantly, like, brings up stereotypes about men. Men are stupid. Men only think with their dicks. While women want romance. Women want emotionality. But Sekai herself, she doesn't seem to be that interested in emotionality and romance. She just seems like she has a good time with Makoto for the most part. And this whole framing of gender in the show just sort of forces these issues onto the characters. I think, I don't know if the show was directly inspired by this book, but like, it's a book that was so popular in pop science, and it's not something that started this. Like, this book didn't start the idea that men and women are fundamentally different.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that in order for the show to be the way it is, that for them to have read this book because
Yeah,
you know a lot of the stuff that you mentioned of the various gender roles. I am aware of this stuff, and I
Yeah.
didn't know about the book.
Yeah.
This just seems like regular like gender roles.
Yeah,
to
but
me.
also the book in general, in being like the best-selling nonfiction book of the 90s, also really impacted how we look at gender roles. And how, like, especially the 90s and the early 2000s looked at gender roles, especially in America. Because that was, like, a book that everyone had read. Like, it was a book that was just, like, generally accepted as fact. I mentioned this, The Myth of Mars and Venus, and there were some other texts that were written about that were critical of the book. Those mainly came out over the early 2000s. Like, the book was pretty uncontested for a while, except for, like, fringe voices. People just assumed that was right. And it's only been, like, fairly recently, especially in the 2000s and especially in the 2010s, where that's really started, that this idea of men and women not being fundamentally different, but being just, like, formed by their environment and completely able to be good friends. Like, I remember when I was in school, that shit was still everywhere. And it's only been fairly recently that this thing has been moving backwards. And I think School Days provides a kind of interesting time capsule in being from 2007, which is, by this point, a while back, of really outdated gender roles, which are still present in a lot of things, but like even in anime, you can see these days that a lot has changed and that gender roles are examined differently, even if anime is still extremely traditional in a lot of ways. But yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say about that. I'm kind of passionate about that issue. I also thought it was really interesting when we talked about it back in university. But yeah, let's get back to the episode for now.
Mm-hmm. So I just have a little something about the next and last scene of our episode.
Okay.
So everyone's now in the canteen, they're eating.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a little screenshot. It's nothing important. So first of all, in the background, there's sets. Now you can see she's wearing her red bow, but I'm more concerned about this guy.
Yeah, I noticed him. He looks like a fucking anime OC from DeviantArt.
There's a guy, just an extra on the right side of the screen who looks like he has his head on sideways. He kind of looks like someone broke a Ken doll, just with the head on wrong.
I mean, he could just be looking to the side, but also he just looks kind of out of place. He's also relevant because he's another male character. We don't have a lot of those in the show. Like, even in the background, we don't have a lot of those. I mean,
the extras are a mix of people.
Yeah.
I think we could talk more about the extras.
We could talk more about the extras. Maybe there's going to be more interesting things about that in the future. Basically, they all meet in the cantina and they eat together food that Kotonoha has brought.
Yeah, Kotonoha has made a bunch of sandwiches.
And this time, nobody's directly comments on them being awful.
Yeah, reminder of the first episode, Kotonoha is bad at making sandwiches, apparently.
Yeah, but, like, they don't seem to be that bad this time. Like, all of them eat at least some, from the looks of it. It's only that Taisuke eats a whole shitload of them.
He goes nuts, because we already know Taisuke is into Kotonoha.
And he's so desperate he'd eat anything made by a girl.
Yeah. Also, they can bring just their own food in there. I thought that was a little weird because it seems that they're drinking stuff that they bought there, I assume.
I don't know how that is. I know that that's okay in, like, outdoors water parks here.
Yeah, no, but they're not outdoors, I think.
Yeah, they're not. But I think that might just be a small difference in between how that runs in different countries. Because, like, I don't know if at the local water park here, if they get mad if we brought our own food into the restaurant area, if we bought drinks. I don't think that would be all that weird.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we eat food that we brought ourselves there, just, like, not in the restaurant area usually. It's not, like, forbidden.
So that's really a minor thing then.
Yeah.
So Hikari mentions that Kotonoha makes a good girlfriend.
I wrote in brackets, true.
Yeah, which I thought is a kind of a strange thing to say.
Yeah.
And I think the reason she says it is to remind us that Taisuke does not know, still not know, that they're in a relation. By the way, we had this classroom scene where the two of them were talking in the back really loudly to each other, and there were only like 3 people in front of them.
Yeah.
And I was like, these guys are constantly talking to each other like this in class. How does Taisuke not know anything?
Yeah, they're talking to each other. That means they're together, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can see they're talking. Can you not hear what they're talking about?
I don't think he's aware of that.
I don't think he's aware of anything.
We see a small shot of Sekai in response to that, being like down again. Her eyes are hidden in shadow. She looks down. No, her eyes are not hidden in shadow here. She just looks very non-emotional at that point.
Taisuke also says, wait, aren't you dating Sekai?
Yeah.
And then Kotonoha clarifies, no.
Yeah, first, before Kotonoha clarifies, Makoto doesn't clarify.
Yeah.
Makoto's like, well, it's actually, he can't bring himself to give, like, a solid answer. And then, yeah.
Yeah, but Kotonoha clarifies while Makoto is hesitant to do so.
Yeah.
So Kotonoha says, yes, it's true, we're in a relationship.
Yeah, and Taisuke is being weird about it again.
Then we get 3 shots that I think
I also wrote that down.
really well illustrate what's going on right now. We get Makoto looking upset, Kotonoha looking happy, and Sekai looking that how did you do in PE today face. Got just dead, empty, insane anime face.
Eyes hidden in shadow, looking down, not showing any emotion. So, yeah, at this point it's pretty clear. Makoto doesn't want to be in this relationship. Sekai, in all honesty, doesn't want the two of them to be in a relationship, even though she keeps saying she wants that and keeps trying to get him. Like, she keeps trying to... okay, I don't know if y'all have seen Hamilton.
I have.
I've seen it in theaters. It's gonna be on Disney Plus soon.
Yes,
this month,
finally.
I think.
Yes, finally.
Finally. It's a musical, just to keep things short. And there's this... That's something I thought about while watching this episode. There's this one song in there. It's my favorite song. It's called Satisfied.
I'll never be satisfied.
Yeah, it's about like this one sister giving like a toast at the wedding of her sister to the guy she was originally in love with. And she like heroically gave up that relationship because she knew her sister wanted it more.
Oh man, are we doing a comparative piece now between School Days and Hamilton?
No, I just thought it was kind of funny because Sekai tries to do the Angelica Schuyler and dramatically give up the relationship she wants so much every single fucking episode. And it's just like, it's like she, every time she talks to Makoto, she tries to make this dramatic sacrifice of, I know I want you, but we can't be together. You should be with her instead. And every time he's like, okay, but could we fuck? Like, just like Alexander Hamilton.
And that's what Hamilton is about, folks.
That's what happens in Hamilton. It's a hip-hop adaptation of School Days. It's very interesting. Also, they use the names of like some American historical people.
I don't know,
it's
who
funny.
cares?
It's kind of funny. My name is Angelica Schuyler. No, it's I just thought of that because it's like, come on, girl. At this point, just fucking give up on it. What I also thought about in this episode is this episode seems like the one where Makoto is supposed to make his choice. This is the one where Makoto considers, do I want to be with Kotonoha or with Sekai? And it seems pretty clear that he's on the Sekai side at this point. That he doesn't want to be with Kotonoha. Kotonoha clearly wants to be with him, but he clearly doesn't want to be with her. And here's a question I have for you. This was the first half of that episode. Have you watched the second half in preparation? Okay, because last time we talked about you not remembering something that happens to the second half.
Yeah, I do now.
Okay.
I do now know.
Okay. Here's a question for you despite that. How would you resolve this episode? What would you do at the end of this episode? What would you think this episode is building up to?
I mean, there's 2 options, right?
Yeah.
Either he decides for Kotonoha and breaks up with Sekai, or he goes for Sekai and breaks up with Kotonoha.
Like, what I would assume with how the framing of this episode goes is exactly what you said. Either it ends with, like, Sekai giving him the final big speech of, like, no, we have to stop this can't keep going, and trying to cut him off entirely, and him ending up with Kotonoha. And maybe her being sad, and maybe that can be brought up again in a future episode. Or him growing some balls, breaking up with Kotonoha, and getting together with Sekai. Since that's clearly what both of them want. Which would be shitty for Kotonoha, but maybe that could develop over the rest of the show too. What happens from that? Who knows? Neither of these is what happens in the end of this episode.
Yeah.
As if you've seen the show, you know. If you haven't seen the show, we'll talk about that next time. What exactly happens there. I mentioned before that the end of this episode has the moment in the show where I screamed at my screen, literally. I still have a file on my computer from the end of that show where I made a screenshot and vandalized it because I was very angry.
I remember that.
A friend had told me to watch the show, and I sent that to him via Facebook Messenger back then, because people still used Facebook back then. There's a history lesson in a lot of ways today. And that was all I remembered from this episode. As we kind of learned now, there was a lot more in it, but that thing happening at the end overshadows all of it. I haven't seen the second half again today. I haven't watched that in preparation. I'll watch that for the next episode. Mm-hmm. Do we still have a bunch of swimming, like water park stuff in the second half?
No.
Okay, then we'll see y'all next time. Yes. Hopefully this time we'll actually manage it in 2 weeks, where we'll get back to this episode of School Days after the water park and see how this whole relationship drama concludes. Because this is the point where the show really has its point of, like, this is where everything changes. It's at the end of this episode. I'm dreadful and excited about it. I hope you are too. We'll see you guys then. I hope you enjoy listening to us suffer, because it's only getting worse. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
See y'all next time.